Hi guys, in this video I'll be showing you the German infantry squads against the USA infantry squads amongst the other tiers and how they fare against each other. Also, I will bring in numbers to the mix based on their cost, similar costs, to see how it affects things. So you basically know who wins in the shootout. This is a very unknown topic for even most of the veterans because it's a very hard thing to calculate because there's so many variables: the type of gun, the type of skill, the type of hit points. You can't calculate that like in other RTSs. Before we go into that though, I'll just show you some UI tips so new players will know as well. So remember, as I said before in the previous video, you can select squads quite easily now without having to look into the squad to see what they are. You can click on one of them, double click, and you have them all. So I'm going to double click all the riflemen, double left click, it's selected all the riflemen. I can build sandbags by now clicking use item, just clicking that sandbag for you new players, and just hold right click and drag, and then you can pretty much put them wherever you want. And same with the SMGs, I can group them, double click by grouping them. What you can also do is, once you've selected these guys, you can hold shift and then press the number. So I've pressed 1 there while holding shift, and you can see the squad's labeled number 1. So now I can select it anytime I want to by pressing the 1 key, and I've got it. The best way to use this feature is when you first buy the squad. That's when it's all selected. So I'll enable this number 2, holding shift, pressing number 2, and it's got 2 there. So now what you can do is like send this squad to here. Then basically you're playing somewhere else. Pretend you're just going here. Then let's say you see a red icon on the map on the left hand side. You know that you're having action there, so shit, I better go there quick. The quickest way is either click on the map, or you can press 2 twice, that first squad. So press 2 twice, and there it is. So I've gone straight to that squad there. You can see how useful it will be to quickly get to an area where the action is using those numbers. So now let's get into the nitty-gritties of this analysis tutorial. In the next few segments of this video, I'll be showing you shootouts between USA and German squads at all the tier levels. But all these tests will be done with a similar price range in mind for both of the factions. So you could sometimes will get a heavy Panzer Grenadier squad, the light tier 3 squad, up against 2 regular squads of the USA, so the cheaper squads, but of the relative price range. The tests are also done at 30 range, which is a pretty good range for all small arms fire such as SMGs, rifles and MGs to do decent accuracy. Also, this test does not take into account any flanking that you can do with the numbers, as you do have a higher chance to flank with a numbered squad, also with grenades. It also does not take into account CP, such as if you have 2 regulars versus a Panzer Grenadier squad, you're going to have more CP used because this costs around 40, this will cost around 30 CP. Nevertheless, this will show basically how a shootout will turn out, and will give you the idea of how powerful they are basically in the game to shoot. So in this scenario, it's basically showing 2 regular squads of the USA squad up against a Panzer Grenadier squad. So this is the 2nd tier squad, costing 150 MP, 2 of them. They sport M1 Garands and a BAR and some Thompson SMGs, mostly M1 Garands though, which is a very good weapon. This is one of the reasons why I like the regulars so much. I came to this thinking they would beat the Panzer Grenadiers, even though they're a bit cheaper. So these come 300 MP all up, whereas the Panzer Grenadiers on the other end are 350 MP and sport the STG 44 and MP40s. So far in this, it looks like the regulars aren't doing too well here. The STG 44 did snipe the MG. It's also a bit dependent on the MG, not so much for the USA squads because the M1 Garands are good on its own and there's so many of them, so it doesn't really matter too much if an MG gets sniped. But you can see how good the regulars are doing versus the tier 4 squad, the more expensive squad. So numbers do mean a lot. But you'll see shortly here the Panzer Grenadiers do make a comeback and take out the regular squad, which was surprising for me because I was quite certain that numbers would mean everything, and especially regulars. regular squads for the USA team, which is the best regular in my opinion in the game. So I'll just show you as well while I'm here using the new feature to reload. So I'll just double click on a rifleman, then I'll click X to examine a corpse, right click, then click on the ammo. Now there's all the riflemen pretty much has shared the ammo amongst each other. So that's a new feature again, allowing you to reload faster as well. So ended up winning, but that's because of the ammo. In this shootout here, we'll be discussing the 4th tier Elite Infantry up against numbers. So in the similar price bracket, we've got 2 regular squads of the German team at 320 MP total and 330 for the Rangers. And we've done a similar test on Panzer Grenadiers up against 2 regulars of the USA team. And we find that pretty much these 4th tier infantry, they do very, very well versus numbers of the similar price range. Reason being, I think, because they obviously have the accuracy and they have the hit points and they don't get pinned down as often as the other squads. So of course, numbers are still very good in this game and they can really take out all the Rangers, but in the end the 4th tier does win versus the numbers of the similar price range. And that's not the same with the 3rd tier. And I think the reason for that is the 4th tier has the hit points. So this is just on shootouts again. I'll be discussing the individual units in another tutorial, but just for shootout purposes, the 4th tier does very well. The 3rd tier infantry Airborne up against an assault squad, 2 assault squads of the German team. So the Airborne here, it costs 230 MP and assaults on the other end 110 MP each, which brings it to 220. Airborne being slightly more expensive. So what we found with the 3rd tier basically is in a shootout against numbers of a similar price range, they don't do as well as the 4th tier, because when they're outnumbered they tend to die quicker, a lot quicker than the 4th tier, because the hit points aren't as much. They can't withstand shots. That's not being said that they're not accurate. They're very accurate in their shooting and killing units, but I'd say if they do get outnumbered, they're going to get outshot eventually. But if they're being used with other squads and they're the squads doing the shooting from behind, they can do quite well. Not saying they have bad hit points, but compared to the 4th tier, they definitely do worse against numbers. Some other findings we have done with the shootouts is basically numbers can really turn it around. So in this scenario here, there's 3 assault squads on the other end up against a ranger squad. So when it gets to the 3 squads, it's pretty much unstoppable. You can't possibly win a shootout versus 3 squads, even if you're an elite squad. But they're pretty much the same MP. So the opposite end, 3 assault squads at 110 MP each, 330, and the ranger squad at 330 MP. Obviously the CP is higher cost for the Germans, but you can see numbers can really win the game here in terms of a shootout. Just give it a big knock to the end, see how far it goes. It's pretty much the result here. Not many Germans lost, and the Rangers just got absolutely hammered. So in conclusion, 3 squads is basically the turning point on really outnumbering an infantry squad to destroy them, even the elite 4th tier. In this test, we're basically showing you the same tier versus same tier, and I'll have a talk about that as well. Basically, when it's the same tier versus same tier, there's actually not too much difference between the units. Generally though, the USA squads do better. So let's say you have a 2nd tier assault squad versus a 2nd tier assault squad on both factions. The USA squad wins the majority, but it's quite close with Germans winning as well for some of the shootouts. The reason mainly we found is that the Germans rely on certain units or certain men inside a squad to make it. So if the assault squad leader dies for the assault squad in the early shootout, they lose, and if the MG42 dies in the regular squad in the shootout, they lose. For the third tier, like the paratroopers and the Panzer Grenadiers, not so much. But I was quite surprised here in this particular example, the Rangers going up the Panzer Grenadiers. I would have thought the STG 44s on those Panzer Grenadiers would have really tipped the edge towards the Germans' favour, but really we did some tests and the Rangers did win more against the Panzer Grenadiers, but it was actually very even. So what I'm trying to say is basically is that it's very even between all the squads between the tiers. There are slight differences in between their weaponry, but in a shootout they're very similar, with the Germans for the second tier relying on their MG42 and their STG 44 for the regular and assault squads respectively. The light marksman squad. These are the 160 MP squads that you get, the new ones, which you can buy for all nations, which have a 4-star, but they only come in 5 people with rifles. Are these worth it? In my opinion, most of the time not. The good thing is that they come with a 20 grenade and 8 AP AT grenades, but in a shootout versus numbers, we've done quite a few scenarios here. Up against a regular squad, which is also 160 MP for the Germans, they can't win basically in a shootout. They get pinned down or outshot eventually, mainly because of the numbers. So they're really not good at fighting numbers, as you can see here. So if I keep skipping down here, I can see them being submuse with some support from some other troops just to wear them down and to easily buy to get an elite squad quickly with lots of grenades and M1 Garands. But in my opinion, I would prefer a sniper at a similar price, or buying a lot of M1 Garands, single M1 Garands, than just 5 of them here. So basically they get pinned down and they lose. In this example here, I'll just show you how you can actually use your units to target specific units. So when you're facing off units that have MGs or STG 44s with the assault squad, you can target them by just right clicking on them. So what I'll do here is basically right click on the MG. So I've selected the squad, right clicked on it, and what they'll do is just target that MG only. So they'll keep firing at MG until it's dead. The negatives here, obviously, it's going to ignore the other troops, but the good things about this is you can just right click it once, it'll target it, and you can do other things while that's happening. So you can see it's taking out the MG, and that's crucial to the regular squad here. And now I can just let it fire whatever it wants and it will win the battle. So this is really the difference in winning an engagement sometimes, by just selecting the priority target in a shootout to win. And yeah, this is a very good example as well on the extreme end of the scale, where I'm using the elite marksmen, which are very bad in a numbered shootout usually, but once the MG42 is down for a regular squad, you can see how quickly they fall like flies. In this scenario here, I'm using the Elite's Marksman again up against the German regular squad, so similar price once again, and I'll be using DC for one of the units. So most of you should know this, but if you have time to micro a unit, let's say you have nothing else to do, you can DC this in a shootout to totally change the battlefield again, or sorry, the outcome of the shootout as previously. As you can see here, you can fire faster with the rifle if your rifle permits, such as the M1 Grenade. I've taken out the MG now, and now I'll just DC the other shots to take him out. The problem with this way is obviously the time it takes. You're pretty much stuck on this unit. You can't use it. You can't use a tank at the other end. You can't control grenades somewhere else. But it will be better than just right clicking on it. But right clicking on it is probably the better option in most games, so you can micro other units. Finally, the shotgunners, they're at 60 MP each for 2, up against an assault squad there at 110. So 120 MP for the Germans versus 110. We have the shotgunners here at their maximum range though, so it won't be as accurate. But you can see there, they're knocking off, they have a knockback effect even behind sandbags, and they also don't discriminate versus all infantry. So even if that was a light infantry, it'll still knock them back, and they drop their weapons and they don't shoot. So they're pretty damn powerful in a shootout as well as in ambush. And I'll just skip forward to the end here, and you'll just show you basically the devastation here. So thank goodness that these guys were nerfed to 60 MP. They used to be 40 MP for 2, and this is why we used to spam these. They were overpowered. Now they're still pretty damn good, but it won't be the whole USA Army the Duck Hunters against. So that was the shootout, guys. We did a lot more tests on lots of different units, but I just show you the ones that I thought were important. If you have any questions on how you think other units will go versus each other, I've probably done the test. Just ask me and I'll let you know how it worked out. So basically, to sum up, numbers are very important in a shootout, but not so important when tier 4 infantry is involved. It seems like Rangers, Panzer Grenadiers and those sorts, the 4th tier, does well versus numbers because of their hit points, whereas below that, such as the 3rd tier and lower than that, numbers can change the game entirely. This is based on a cost versus cost analysis there. So in terms of the benefits for numbers and damage they can do and the cost, I would say the assault squad is probably the best. It seems to do the most amount of damage in numbers based on the amount that they cost, the cheap amount they cost. So I do recommend that unit. As you see, we have been spamming that a lot in our tournament games. The new light marksman, I'd say it's not a great buy because it can just pretty much get outnumbered and outshot, and they get pinned down quite often by numbers, surprisingly. So they can't actually outshoot a normal regular squad. That's what we found. But they do have a lot of grenades. So yeah, numbers seem to rule the roost except versus the tier 4 infantry. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions on any other matchups, and I'll go through the specific units in the unit tutorials once we get there. This is just for the shootouts.